Stay focused on you.
No, it's not fair.
But it
I'll
sounds
end it
like
there.
it's tit for tat.
No.
Like you did it because I did it.
No, I'm not
Stay
saying
fair.
it.
Why are we...
Y'all, this was not supposed to come out. Because the moment this video allegedly landed on Cecil Whitmore's phone, nothing was ever going to be the same again. Not the marriage. Not the reputations. And definitely not the carefully protected image everyone thought they knew. According to Cecil, this wasn't a rumor, a whisper, or some internet lie. This was a video. A real one. Sent directly to him. And the first word he used to describe it was disturbing. Not confusing. Not questionable. Disturbing. Sources claim the footage allegedly shows a private hotel room, doors closed, curtains drawn, silence louder than words. And right there, in what Cecil describes as undeniable clarity, were Dr. Simone and Dr. Damon. Too close. Uncomfortably close. Close enough that explanations start to fall apart. Same bed. Same blanket. Same moment frozen in time. Cecil says this wasn't speculation. This wasn't imagination. This was caught in 4K. Every second sharp. Every frame brutal. And what made it worse? The video was allegedly sent by Dr. Heavenly herself after she supposedly walked in and caught them when they believed no one was watching. And that's when this story turns dark. Cecil now claims that not long after this alleged video existed, accusations suddenly appeared. Allegations about money. About $60,000. About him. About their son, Michael. And according to Cecil, those claims weren't random. They were strategic. A distraction. A shield. A way to bury what couldn't be explained. Now social media is on fire. Lines are being drawn. Silence is being questioned. And one video, just one, has allegedly turned a private betrayal into a public tragedy. Because if this footage is real, then this isn't gossip anymore. It's an explosion.
Let me say this. I plead the fifth.
Okay.
But we can never say that based on how somebody looks that they would never cheat.
Correct.
You don't know who has the ability to cheat.
Tammy.
And it's not based on
Tammy.
their looks.
Buckle up, because what allegedly unfolded behind closed doors didn't just fracture a relationship, it detonated an entire public narrative in slow motion. According to sources familiar with the situation, this story didn't begin with shouting or scandal. It began with a phone vibrating in the dark, a message arriving without warning, and a video that one man says he can't unsee. Cecil Whitmore, speaking through people close to him, allegedly received a clip that would redefine everything he thought he knew. Not a rumor. Not a screenshot. A video. Short, silent, and devastating. Those sources say Cecil sat with it before pressing play, unaware that the next few seconds would split his life into before and after. The footage, he later described, wasn't graphic, but it didn't need to be. Context did all the talking. The setting, according to insiders, was a private hotel room. Neutral walls. Heavy curtains. A space designed to erase footprints. In the frame, two figures appeared, Dr. Simone and Dr. Damon, close enough that distance ceased to exist. Same bed. Same blanket. A stillness that felt intimate rather than accidental. No chaos, no confusion. Just a quiet proximity that, as one source put it, said more than words ever could. Cecil allegedly recognized the room immediately. He recognized the posture, the familiarity, the comfort. And what struck him most, sources say, was the calm. This wasn't a moment of panic caught mid-explanation. This was a moment that appeared lived in. Practiced. Normal. The kind of normal that doesn't happen once. What made the situation explode, according to multiple accounts, was how the video came into existence. The clip was allegedly sent by Dr. Heavenly, someone who, insiders claim, walked into that room at the exact wrong moment. There was no warning. No time to separate. No chance to reframe the narrative. Just shock, silence, and a phone lifted before anyone could stop it. People close to the situation say Dr. Heavenly didn't release the footage publicly. She allegedly sent it privately, directly, as if saying, "This is what I saw, and this is what you deserve to know." That single act, sources argue, turned a secret into evidence. And evidence has weight. As Cecil allegedly watched the clip again and again, he began connecting dots that had once felt harmless. Missed calls. Changed tones. Long nights explained away as work. The kinds of details that only make sense after the truth arrives. Friends say he didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He went quiet. And quiet, in moments like this, is dangerous. Then came the second blow. According to sources aligned with Cecil, allegations soon surfaced accusing him and his son, Michael, of reckless spending, specifically a $60,000 figure that began circulating in conversations and whispers. Cecil reportedly believes this wasn't coincidence. He allegedly claims the accusations were a diversion, introduced to muddy the waters and redirect attention away from the video that threatened to collapse everything. Those close to him say Cecil felt cornered, betrayed privately, then challenged publicly. In his view, the narrative was being flipped, turning him from the injured party into the accused. And once that shift begins, it's nearly impossible to reverse. What followed, insiders say, felt less like a family dispute and more like a courtroom without a judge. Every conversation became testimony. Every silence felt like guilt. Every denial sounded rehearsed. People began choosing sides without knowing the full story, because in scandals like this, perception moves faster than proof. Social media caught the scent quickly. Questions erupted. Why the secrecy? Why the sudden financial claims? Why no? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if there was nothing to hide, why did the video exist in the first place? Sources insist Cecil never wanted this to be public. He allegedly wanted acknowledgement, honesty, and closure. Instead, he found himself navigating a storm where every word could be weaponized. Friends describe him as devastated not just as a partner, but as a father, watching his child's name dragged into a conflict he never chose. Meanwhile, the silence from the other side only intensified the speculation. No clear denials. No detailed explanations. Just carefully measured responses that, according to observers, felt more legal than emotional. And in the court of public opinion, that distinction matters. People close to the situation say Cecil felt like he was reliving the video in real time as it echoed through conversations he couldn't control. The still frame. The shared space. The intimacy that didn't belong to him anymore. Each retelling stripped another layer of privacy away. Behind the scenes, insiders claim pressure mounted to keep everything contained. To settle quietly. To move on. But there's a problem with moving on when the past keeps replaying itself on a screen. This wasn't just about infidelity, sources say. It was about power, perception, and who gets to define the truth when evidence exists, but remains unseen by the public. Because once a video is known to exist, its shadow becomes as powerful as the footage itself. As part 1 closes, the situation remains unresolved. The video, allegedly still private, hangs over everyone involved like an unspoken verdict. Accusations linger. Trust is fractured. And the question that refuses to go away is simple but brutal. If the truth ever fully surfaces, who survives it? Because in scandals like this, silence isn't peace. It's the sound of something breaking slowly, and then all at once. The tension only deepened as days passed, because unresolved stories don't fade, they ferment. According to people familiar with the situation, the existence of the video began to quietly reshape every interaction around it. Conversations became guarded. Words were chosen carefully. And behind closed doors, what once felt like a private betrayal started to resemble a legal chess match where every move mattered. Sources claim Cecil Whitmore didn't immediately confront anyone. Instead, he allegedly sought confirmation not from rumors, not from social media, but from patterns that suddenly felt impossible to ignore. He replayed timelines in his head, trips that overlapped, excuses that now felt hollow. Moments he once dismissed as misunderstandings began forming a picture he never wanted to see. And the most painful realization, according to those close to him, was that the video didn't introduce a new reality, it confirmed an old one he had refused to accept. Insiders say the emotional toll was visible. Cecil reportedly withdrew, not out of indifference, but out of survival. He was no longer just processing betrayal, he was calculating consequences. Because once allegations exist, they don't stay contained. They bleed into reputations, careers, and families who never asked to be involved. Meanwhile, sources allege pressure began mounting to control the narrative. Quiet conversations allegedly took place, urging discretion, restraint, and silence for the sake of everyone involved. But silence, in situations like this, rarely protects the person who's already been hurt. It protects the image that's most at risk. The $60,000 spending accusations, according to people aligned with Cecil, didn't fade, they intensified. What started as whispers allegedly hardened into talking points, repeated often enough to feel factual. Cecil reportedly felt his credibility being chipped away piece by piece, while the core issue, the video, remained unaddressed. In his view, this wasn't coincidence. It was deflection. Those close to him claim he watched as sympathy slowly shifted. Questions stopped being about what happened in that hotel room and started focusing on money, responsibility, and character. And once the spotlight moves, it's almost impossible to drag it back where it belongs. Observers described the situation as resembling a courtroom without walls. There were no judges, but there were juries everywhere, on screens, in comment sections, in private group chats where opinions formed faster than facts. Each side presented fragments of truth, carefully curated, while the full story remained locked behind a video no one else had seen. Sources allege Cecil wrestled with a brutal dilemma: protect privacy or protect himself. Releasing the footage, even partially, could permanently scar everyone involved, including a child who had already been pulled into the narrative. Keeping it private, however, meant allowing accusations to stand unanswered. Either choice came with irreversible damage. Friends say this is where the tragedy deepened. Cecil wasn't just fighting for his name, he was fighting to shield his son from becoming collateral damage. Michael's name, according to insiders, was never meant to be part of this. Yet suddenly, it was being spoken in the same breath as scandal, money, and blame. That, sources say, is what finally broke him. On the other side, the lack of detailed response fueled speculation. Carefully worded statements, alleged denials without specifics, and strategic quiet only amplified public suspicion. In moments like this, emotion matters. And what the public perceived wasn't emotion, it was control. Calculated. Measured. Cold. People watching from the outside began asking uncomfortable questions. Why had no one directly addressed the video? Why were financial accusations emerging now? And why did every explanation seem to orbit around everything except the alleged footage itself? Insiders claim the video's power came from what it didn't show. There was no chaos. No sudden panic. Just familiarity. Comfort. A closeness that suggested history. And that implication, sources say, was more devastating than any explicit act could have been. Because it hinted at something ongoing, something intentional. As the narrative spiraled, Cecil reportedly felt isolated. Allies grew quiet. Neutral parties distanced themselves. And those who once checked in stopped calling altogether. Scandal has a way of revealing who's present for truth and who's present for convenience. Behind the scenes, sources allege legal considerations entered the conversation. Not lawsuits, but risk assessments. What could be said? What couldn't? What would escalate the situation beyond repair? At that point, the story was no longer about betrayal, it was about containment. But containment failed the moment public curiosity ignited. Because when people know a video exists, imagination fills in the gaps. And imagination is rarely kind. Observers describe Cecil as emotionally exhausted, carrying the weight of a truth he couldn't share and accusations he couldn't escape. Every attempt to move forward seemed to drag the past back into focus. The hotel room, the blanket, the stillness, the moment that allegedly changed everything. What makes this situation uniquely tragic, according to sources, is that resolution remains impossible without exposure. Yet exposure threatens to destroy more than it reveals. That paradox is where everyone involved now lives. As this chapter continues, one thing is clear to those watching closely. This isn't about gossip anymore. It's about whose version of events becomes permanent. Because once a story hardens in public memory, facts struggle to soften it. The video remains unseen, but its presence dominates every conversation. Accusations continue to echo. Silence grows heavier. And the emotional cost keeps climbing, especially for those who never chose to be part of this narrative. In stories like this, there are no winners, only survivors. And as the pressure builds, the question looming over everything is no longer what happened, but how much more damage will occur before the truth, whatever it is, finally surfaces. The pressure didn't break all at once, it tightened slowly, like a room losing air. According to those close to the situation, what followed was a period of uneasy calm that felt anything but peaceful. Every move was measured, every word weighed, and every silence carried an implication that refused to fade. Sources claim Cecil Whitmore began documenting everything, not for spectacle, but for survival. Messages were saved. Dates were noted. Timelines were reconstructed with the precision of someone who knew memory alone would be challenged. In private, he allegedly repeated the same line to those he trusted. This is no longer about emotion. It's about truth. And truth, once questioned publicly, demands structure. What complicated matters, insiders say, was the widening circle of impact. Friends of friends began to talk. Industry acquaintances took sides quietly. Invitations dried up. Rooms went cold. The alleged video had become an invisible presence, shaping outcomes without ever being seen. In scandals like this, absence can be louder than exposure. According to people familiar with the exchanges, attempts were made to de-escalate. Suggestions of mediation surfaced. Proposals to clear misunderstandings were floated. But Cecil reportedly viewed these efforts as premature, even performative. In his view, reconciliation without acknowledgement felt like erasure. And erasure, he believed, would leave him permanently on the defensive. The emotional toll, sources say, intensified around one unspoken fear: permanence. Once narratives solidify, they calcify. And Cecil allegedly understood that if the spending accusations continued to circulate unchecked, they would outlive any quiet resolution. What troubled him most, insiders note, was how easily financial claims eclipsed the original issue, reframing the story around character rather than conduct. Observers described the public reaction as fragmented. Some focused on loyalty, others fixated on money. A growing segment questioned motives across the board, but nearly everyone returned to the same unresolved center, the existence of footage no one else had verified. That uncertainty became the story's engine. Behind the scenes, sources allege conversations grew more legal in tone. Not confrontational, but cautious. Words like implications, liability, and exposure entered discussions that once revolved around trust. The shift signaled something important. This had crossed from private crisis into reputational risk. Cecil's supporters claim this is where the tragedy sharpened. He wasn't seeking public vindication, they say. He wanted the narrative to stop moving without him, to be heard without being forced to burn everything down. Yet every path forward appeared to demand a sacrifice, privacy, peace, or protection for his child. Insiders say the mention of Michael's name continued to haunt the process. What began as an adult dispute had, through repetition, pulled a younger life into its orbit. Cecil reportedly drew a line there. According to those close to him, he refused any option that would amplify harm to his son, even if it meant enduring personal damage. On the other side, the response remained controlled. No expansive explanations. No emotional counterpoints. Just restraint that some interpreted as discipline and others read as distance. In the absence of clarity, interpretations multiplied. And with each new theory, the original facts became harder to isolate. People who watched closely noticed a subtle change. Sympathy no longer flowed in one direction. Fatigue set in. Audiences accustomed to quick resolutions grew restless. They wanted closure. They wanted clarity. They wanted the unseen to be seen. That appetite, once awakened, rarely goes unsatisfied. According to sources, Cecil wrestled with the ethics of disclosure. He allegedly believed the video, if released, would settle questions instantly. But it would also inflict collateral damage that could never be undone. In that calculus, there were no clean outcomes, only degrees of harm. The alleged hotel room remained the story's silent witness. The details, same space, shared stillness, familiarity, continued to resurface in retellings, each time acquiring new weight. What made it devastating, sources say, wasn't just proximity. It was the implication of duration, of something sustained rather than spontaneous. As weeks passed, insiders claim the situation reached an inflection point. Quiet containment no longer held. Conversations leaked. Context slipped. And once fragments escape, they rarely return intact. Each retelling sharpened edges, blurred nuance, and hardened positions. Those aligned with Cecil say he began preparing for a future where the truth might emerge without his consent. Screenshots. Summaries. Second-hand descriptions. A narrative built around a video instead of by it. That prospect, they argue, felt worse than any deliberate release. Observers likened the moment to a stalled verdict. Everyone sensed an outcome approaching, but no one could predict its shape. Careers hovered in uncertainty. Relationships recalibrated. And the emotional cost mounted quietly, unevenly, across everyone involved. What makes this chapter particularly sobering, according to sources, is the absence of resolution. No public reckoning. No definitive denial that addressed specifics. No confirmation that ended speculation. Just a widening gap between what is known and what is believed. As the story presses forward, the consequences appear less about scandal and more about erosion. Trust erodes. Patience erodes. The benefit of the doubt erodes. And when those foundations weaken, even small disclosures can cause outsized collapse. In the end, those watching closest say the tragedy lies not only in the alleged betrayal, but in the aftermath, the slow, grinding process of living inside uncertainty, where every choice carries risk, where silence speaks, where truth feels both necessary and destructive. The video remains unseen. The accusations persist. And the people at the center continue to navigate a landscape reshaped by a moment they cannot rewind. Whatever comes next, one thing is already clear to those paying attention. This story has crossed the point where quiet fixes are possible. What remains is endurance, of scrutiny, of doubt, of consequences still unfolding. And as the public waits for clarity, the cost of not knowing continues to rise, measured not in headlines, but in the lasting damage left behind when a private fracture becomes a public reckoning. What happens next depends on what stays hidden and what finally comes out. Because at this point, silence is no longer neutral. It's a choice. And every choice made in the dark has consequences when the lights turn on. Sources say the pressure hasn't eased, it's intensified. Behind polite statements and controlled appearances, something is clearly breaking. You can feel it in the pauses, in the careful wording, in what's being avoided rather than addressed. This is the moment where narratives lock in, where the version repeated the loudest becomes the version remembered forever. And if that unseen footage exists the way insiders describe, then the cost of pretending it doesn't is growing by the hour. Careers don't collapse all at once, they erode. Trust doesn't disappear overnight, it leaks. And reputations don't die loudly, they suffocate quietly. Viewers aren't stupid. They notice patterns. They connect dots. They ask the questions no one wants to answer. Why now? Why this angle? Why the money talk instead of the room everyone keeps whispering about? When stories pivot without explanation, suspicion fills the gap. And once suspicion hardens, control slips away. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about accountability. It's about whether truth gets managed or acknowledged. And it's about the people caught in the crossfire who never asked to be characters in someone else's damage control. The longer this drags on, the more collateral it creates. So here's the reality. Either clarity comes voluntarily, or it arrives through leaks, fragments, and secondhand retellings that no one can steer. There is no rewind button. There is only the next move and the fallout that follows it. Stay alert. Watch who speaks and who doesn't. Pay attention to what's said and what's carefully left out. Because when a story reaches this stage, the ending doesn't whisper. It hits.